One way to write elements is in elemental notation. Here I've written sulfur in that format. There are these numbers around, and I'll tell you what they are. So this number is the mass number. This number is the atomic number. And this one is the charge. And keep note that sometimes if it is only a positive 1 or a negative 1 charge, that it might be just written as plus or minus. So it might not always be a number. And this is how you write in elemental notation. So we know the atomic number, the mass number, and the charge. But why should this be useful? Well, we can also figure out the number of subatomic particles in each element written. And so the subatomic particles are what? They are protons, electrons, and neutrons. And to keep note, protons, they have a charge of a positive 1. Electrons have a charge of -1. Okay, so I'll write some elements down here in elemental notation, and let's try to figure out the amount of these subatomic particles there are in each of the examples. So we have neon. Let's start off with that. Alright, so the very obvious one number here is the atomic number, because we know that the atomic number is the same as the amount of protons there are in the element, or in the atom. So that means we have 10 protons. And the atomic weight, or the mass number, is 20. And we know that protons and neutrons weigh the same, almost the same, 1 atomic mass unit. So that means there's an equal amount of neutrons as protons. And the electrons, let's look here at the charge. That's where we can find a clue of how many electrons there are. So it's 0. That means this neon atom is neutral. So there's no charge, which means that we should have the same amount of positive and negative charges, which makes that 10 electrons. Okay, let's move on to silver. Alright, let's look at the atomic number first, which is 18, which means there are 18 protons. Now the mass number is 40. Well, we can find out the amount of neutrons by subtracting the amount of protons from the weight, the atomic weight. So we know that we have 22 neutrons. Now the amount of electrons depends on the charge, and we can see that it's a positive 1 charge. So that means we should have one more positive charge compared to the negative. So that makes the electrons 17. Alright, let's move on to calcium. So for calcium, I did not write the atomic number here. But how do we find it out? Well, we can go look at the periodic table. And if we do, we can find out the atomic number is 20. So that means we have 20 protons. And since the atomic weight is 40, that means that there are 20 neutrons. And it has a 2 plus charge, which means we want 2 more protons than electrons, so the electrons is 18. And that's how we can utilize the elemental notation.